Welcome to Outside the Box here on Freedom Reigns Blog Talk Radio. I'm your host tonight, Kay of Gaia. Every night I'm that. Every morning too, lunchtimes especially. Anyway, it's going to be a hell of a night tonight. We got a full moon going on. I don't know about everybody on the call tonight, but I am PMSing like to the nines. Just did not want to do anything. But anyway, we have none other than Mark Passio. This is the Dream Call. I actually called up or tagged Santo to see if Santo Bonacci wanted to join us. But we have on the helm as well tonight, Tony Z. And what a pleasure, what an honor to have you on board, Mark. Yeah, we're going to have some fun tonight, huh?
Absolutely.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me onto the show.
Oh, please. This is awesome. And I thought it was very fitting, you know, when Tony said he got a hold of you, and we ended up booking it for November 28th, unbeknownst that it was going to be a full moon, unbeknownst of what has been unfolding in the world, because I know you live in the real world, Mark, where most people are caught up in this illusion, and that's what I really want to get into tonight.
Sure.
There we go. So where do you guys want to start? Maybe a little background, Mark, just for the good listeners. We do have a lot of them.
Sure.
Many may know who you are, but let them know.
I'll keep it pretty brief because, as you said, we want to get to solutions. But people should just basically know a little bit about my background. I'm, of course, an independent researcher, a public speaker, a radio talk show host, and a conference organizer here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on the East Coast of the United States. I was born into an Italian-American family with Roman Catholic religious beliefs, and when I was young, accepted a lot of the religious dogma that I was given by family members and school teachers, and that really changed abruptly in my late grade school and early high school years when I began to really seriously doubt the veracity of all of that religious dogma, and that kind of turned into a lot of anger and hatred. That's the way that I channeled it at that young age. Around, it was kind of like a rebellion, but in a wrongly channeled way. And I decided around 16 and 17 that I was going to become involved in the most polar antithesis of organized religion that I could possibly get involved with, and that led me into the ideology of Satanism. Satanism, in an ideological sense, as set forward by Anton LaVey in his book, The Satanic Bible. I became an adherent of this satanic ideology that was espoused by LaVey and other satanic authors, and at some point, the work that I was doing with music and writing was recognized by LaVey himself, who was the founder of the Church of Satan in America. He appointed me to a priesthood position within the Church of Satan, and through my involvement with that organization and other organizations involved in what I've now since come to know as a larger, wider satanic network, a hierarchically organized satanic network, I became involved in organizations such as the Church of Satan, the Church of Lucifer, the Order of the Evil Eye, that had some affiliations with the Temple of Set, and was involved also with the Whitehall Church of Satan, among others. As my involvement in Satanism in general grew, I realized this wasn't an isolated group of individuals that was just doing, this work to gain personal power, but they were really part of an interconnected network that was operating globally, and they were working together for specific goals, and those goals were control of every single aspect of life institutionally on this planet, including politics, banking, law, military, law enforcement, entertainment, media, technology, medicine, education, you name the institution. Satanists were ultimately involved at the highest levels and ultimately running these institutions. And once I realized that this was about total domination of people and their mindset and just controlling their lives in every way, I began to step back from it and pull back my involvement and realizing, of course, I wasn't involved at any high level at any time in this, but at that low level, I realized that these lower level orders that interface with the public were actually operating as psychological filtration systems to really vet members, and they were searching for psychopathic characteristics so that they can vet those people and then bring them up for grooming into the wider hierarchical order that was operating worldwide, and then place those people into key positions of power. That's really how this network operates globally. When I realized that, I was basically being used in such a way and groomed for such tasks, I started pulling back my involvement with all of these groups and their agenda, because I still had a conscience and still, I didn't want slavery for the people of Earth. I wanted freedom. I just thought that this was a way of gaining an edge over people, because you were looking into occult information, which is simply hidden knowledge. That's all the word occult even means. It comes from the Latin occultare, which means to hide or to conceal or to keep secret. So looking into occult information, I figured, would give me an advantage over other people who lacked that information. And I was in a very much egoic, selfish worldview mindset back then, but not so much of a psychopath that I wanted to see human slavery. So again, that small amount of the developed conscience that I did have at that point led me to pull back and separate from my involvement in those groups. And today what I do is work to show people how this interconnected network operates and how they're really in control of all existing institutions. And ultimately, they are the mind controllers of the world. They are the people who are actually putting out all of the false fundamental axioms that we bite onto and latch onto and stay attached to and believe in firmly, that ultimately creates nothing but suffering in our lives. And I've made it my life's goal to basically help people to see the falsity in these axiomatic systems of belief, and to separate from them so that they can really help to free their minds and ultimately better their lives.
Mark, you nailed it right there, and it really is about freeing one's mind out of the paradigm of the illusion of the effect that we are all, at effect to, instead of being cause over. And I couldn't agree more. This is the joy. It's like, yeah, here's someone that really gets it beyond beyond most levels of comprehension. And also, I do want to hook up with you on Skype at some point and just go over my workings of word writings, rituals, in terms of tracing it right back to the flower of life. Literally, every letter, every shape, every symbol, every number came off the flower of life, and that's where my intuition led me to work on the dispelling of the power of the symbols. And I got to tell you, since then, it's been a download of downloads in the etheric. And people don't know. Well, they do now. More people know now than they've ever known, than has ever been in history, as far as I can tell. The level of control that these dark entities are exerting. But I also bring forth the solution aspect of, well, that's part of our test. Can we handle it? And really, it's about that awakening. And Tony did mention that he had. He's got a few questions. I know he does. I got lots too. Waiting for Martin to come on.
Sure.
Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Kate. Hi, Mark. Great to have you on with us tonight. I'm so buzzing. I'm so excited. It's wonderful, because I've looked at your work, I've looked at what you do, and it's what we do in a nutshell to try and get that information across. You actually hit all the nails on the head from right away from A to Z, as far as I can see at the moment. But yeah, thank you so much for your work. Beautiful.
Well, Tony, thank you as well.
Oh, it's great. This is what I'm here to do, pretty much like you yourself understand that. But I don't know, we can start literally anywhere. I just wanted to pick a couple of things initially to get right into it, straight from the off. We have been talking about symbols and the resonant frequencies within symbols. In other words, if people are using magic, there is a symbolic frequency attached to the symbols. If there is a crop circle, there is a symbolic frequency.
Yeah, you cut out there, Tony. Try again.
Oh, okay. I was just saying the symbolic frequencies attached to symbols. And I wondered if you wanted to expand on that a little bit for us, Mark, please.
Well, see, everything is energy. and form carries an energetic frequency with it. This is why if you go into a particular building and it's shaped a particular way, there's a resonant frequency that is actually attached to that shape, the sound that it carries with it. You can see this in buildings most effectively, but even archetypal symbols, just basic forms comprised of simple form, line, curves, etc., in the way that they're arranged actually has, as you've said, frequency attached to it. And this operates, of course, in a more subtle way than something like a large-scale architectural project would, of course, but nonetheless there is an influence that can be exerted through, in a subtle way, through this form upon the subconscious mind, particularly when the intent and the way that the symbol is being used is unknown to most people. People will say, well, if I don't believe it, it doesn't have an effect on me. Wrong. It's the exact other way around. If you're not literate of symbols, if you don't have symbol literacy and understand that this is a hidden language, just like sound carries frequency with it, it carries a vibratory form and then it is decoded when it reaches your ear, okay? And then it's interpreted as electrical signals by the brain. The same thing happens with symbols with the eye. You see it, there is a frequency attached to it through the form, and then it is being decoded by the brain. At a subconscious level, if you're not symbol literate and aware of the intent of the symbol and how it's being used, it will have a much lesser effect upon the behavior because it will not be just going into the subconscious mind and affecting programming there. If you're aware of it, there will be a lessening of the effect if you're aware of the intent and meaning of the symbol, especially in the context in which it's being used. If you have that symbol literacy, that will be the effect of it will be actually greatly diminished on the subconscious mind, and there will be conscious awareness of what they're trying to do with that symbol. Therefore, it really can't act as much as programming. But again, that has to be brought to the conscious level, that information, before that effect can be diminished.
Totally agree.
Totally agree. Absolutely beautiful.
Maybe a point of illustration, just for the listeners. One of the best and well-known symbols that actually hypnotize the nation is the reverse swastika, which changed the energy, which made people effectively docile and able to control and manipulate. Probably know it best as Nazi Germany. And the power of the swastika as a symbol, if you don't know what it is, it's actually a very powerful, good symbol in the opposite turning direction of what the Nazi swastika is. So again, I've been trying to bring the education to people that stop looking at things as good or evil, look at them as good and evil. They're both there. You have to make the intent choice, the aware, conscious, always vigilant acceptance of it, that's what your intent of it is.
That's right.
Another example, I'll throw this one at you because I want to see where you go. One of the things I discovered on my own word deciphering, of course I changed the spellings. I go pretty much strictly with sound to decipher them. But one of the things that my entry level came in through legal stuff and whatever, long story, not worth going into. But what I discovered in the lowercase letters, because with capital letters, there's money there. Money is capital, and when you have capital, it's a symbology of it. With the lowercase letters, what I discovered with the letters E and A they're actually mirrors of yin and yang, the 9 and the 6 reversed. And that's what I've been doing, going through all the different letters and all the different spellings of words to see letter by letter, sentence by sentence within each word. And it is so deep, and it's no wonder they had us duped, and that's kind of why I stay focused on that mostly. But again, I go back to the good and evil, and people are getting it. They are getting it. I'm seeing that in my emails. It's pretty.
You want to be careful when first approaching the topic of symbolism in general, because a lot of people make the mistake that, it's all bad and none of it could possibly be used for any good, and, that's not necessarily the case. We have to realize that very similar to any given technology, symbolism is neither good nor bad inherently on its own. It is how it is used within its context, within connotation, that determines whether it is uplifting mankind or whether it is acting in a detrimental way to the consciousness. So when you talk about the swastika, I think that's a perfect example that has a lot of baggage attached to it because of how it was used, in the mid-20th century. But that's an ancient symbol of prosperity, good fortune, harmony, flowing energy, light. It's really a symbol of the sun, technically. And all of those modalities of consciousness are what that symbol originally was being used to represent. The Nazis took it, of course, they turned it backwards, they inverted it, just like a Satanist may invert a cross representing Christianity or representing the golden rule, etc., living a conscious life, treating others with the same respect that you would want to be treated with, etc., and turning that upside down to represent the satanic ideology. The swastika was turned around and it became the symbol of the Black Sun. One of the inner orders of Nazi Germany that was based in the occult was the Schwarz Sun Order, which was the Order of the Black Sun. And, people really need to research a lot of these occult connections to political organizations such as this. And they're still operating in the world today, groups like this. And those that are even darker and bigger than something like that. They haven't gone away. They're still operating under most people's radar because people are loath to look into the occult and the connections with secret societies, etc. Because you really have to go down the rabbit hole and open up your mind and understand that these people are really working with deep knowledge of ancient symbolism. They're working with ancient knowledge of how the human psyche operates, and they have thousands of years of a head start on the human population that really is very much lacking in almost all of the knowledge that they have possessed, that these occult groups have possessed generationally. And that puts them at a tremendous tactical advantage over the bulk of humanity. And, what I look at my work is, and I'm sure you gentlemen do as well, is we may be studiers of the occult, but really what we are ultimately is, I call our work de-occultism. We are de-occulting this information. We're taking it out of hiding. We're taking it out of the dark and bringing it to the light and sharing it openly and freely so we can help people to understand how this hidden information about the human psyche and how it ultimately operates has been used against the human species because they lack it. They lack that knowledge, and it has been used, this knowledge has actually been used against the human species as a weapon for far too long. And what we're trying to do is level that playing field.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was waiting for you that time, Tony. I figured I'd let you go ahead. One of the things I do want to mention and take it from there, Tony, is things that seem very innocent when you talk about comedies or whatever. When you were describing the Schwarz aspect of the Black, look at the movie spoof on Star Wars, May the Schwarz be with you. And it's these hidden little things that people need to pay attention to. But one of the things that we found, at least I have, and I'm sure you have, and Tony and everyone that is working in this realm, is as soon as we decipher and decode something and upload it to the Akashic, it nullifies it. And that's why basically we're all a 100th monkey, and we all have a job to do. We all have a responsibility. Just my feeling on it. Tony?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really pleased that you mentioned the Star Wars movie there for an example, because that was actually on my list. It's not in an order, but I've got a list of pertinent questions. And yes, you're completely right, but the way that these things are given to, these things are shown to us, whereby we don't actually get the true meanings of them, is in a perfect example, the Hollywood movies and the films. Where things are hidden in plain sight. In other words, they'll give you a movie, let's say Star Wars or The Matrix or any of the countless other movies, Stargate, it's limitless. But they're giving you the information which has to be done. We appreciate that, and we'll get to that further in the show. But the point is, what they're saying to you is, but don't worry about it. It's nothing to worry about. It's only science fiction. So therefore, they've fulfilled both parts of the natural law balance, because they provided you the information, but it's up to you. If you didn't decode it correctly, it's not their problem. They are free and absolved of their karmic responsibility because you weren't smart enough to get it. And I use you generally as the populace. Can you give us some information on that? That's probably a good
Yes,
to carry on.
Absolutely. People have to realize that so much of what we see in popular fiction is allegorical. And this is a term that many people may have heard of, but many may not have. You have to understand what an allegory is. Allegory. An allegory is a story, a picture, a poem, a tale, a fable of some kind that is symbolically interpreted to bring forward a hidden meaning or a hidden message. And the message is often a moral lesson. It is a lesson about what is really going on in the world around us, and it is a lesson that deals with right and wrong at a deep fundamental level. That's what an allegory is, and so much of popular fiction, works of powerful popular fiction, are presented in allegory. And there's a reason that this is done. It is done because they realize that people don't want to sit through something that is dry and boring and just, is trying to tell them forthrightly a moral lesson. People are so really, the real word is dumbed down, the real term that, to be, kind of harsh about it. They've been dumbed down to a point where it's almost like you can't give this information to a great bulk of the masses of the people of the world, because they really don't even have the abstract reasoning and cognitive capability to even think at a level to be able to understand it openly when it's talked about the way we're discussing it right now. So what many artists will do is take the lesson, they will wrap it in an attractive tale or story, and put some special effects on it, dress it up, so to speak, and they'll present it as a work of fiction in the form of entertainment. This will reel people in and grab their attention, but at some level, the subconscious message, the moral lesson, will become embedded in the mind on a subconscious level through the fictionalized account that is given to them in the movie, and that will reach them, actually more effectively than if you were to try to sit down with them and, hammer this information into them in a direct way. So it's kind of bypassing all of the barriers and walls of the conscious mind, and it's slipping the message in allegorically at the subconscious level.
Yeah, which is exactly what they did with the Bible. You can look at that beautiful mystical book and find a lot of the truths in it using the allegorical approach and understanding what they were really trying to convey across. Or you can take the literal translation of it, and you end up with the society that we have right now that's too busy going around killing itself and killing each other, using these literal, excuses, if you will. And you nailed it with the dumbing down, and it starts at a very young age. And they've even got parents, myself being one of them, not really fully aware, years back of what was, fully going on, not to the degree we know now. But you can look back and go, yeah, that, it could be something as simple as watching television as a kid, watching cartoons. It's there everywhere. They've thrown this stuff in Disney, especially Disney. It's always about killing the mother figure, sacrificing the mother generally early on in the movie. Finding Nemo is a good example, Bambi, you name it. And they're planting these seeds of discord at a very young age and at a very deep subconscious level,
Well, again, just like symbolism, we have to understand that allegories can be positive or negative as well. It is how it is used, and it is the intent of the artist, what they're really trying to say, and nest into their film or project, and it's how that's being used that determines whether it's going to have a powerful, empowering, positive impact upon consciousness, or whether it's going to act as further conditioning and subconscious programming to affect a particular behavior toward the negative.
Yeah, and again, you nailed it with, it's all about intent, you see, and we are an electrical universe with the electromagnetics working hand in hand together. That electrical intent is, I mean, you can look at the dark church known as Quartz as a prime example of using that energy in a very, very negative way. Where was I going there? It was very specific. I wanted to tunnel in on something. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. It'll come back to me.
Yeah, again, it's twisting everything. So, like you said perfectly there, Mark, it slips the information in, so it affects us on the inside without us actually realizing that we've been affected by it. In a similar way that television, especially high definition television, etc., programs the mind without us even having a clue that that's been done. So that leads us perfect into that. I wonder if you can comment there.
Sure. People will say, well, once you understand television programming is trying to reach the subconscious, totally disconnect from it. I would say you don't want to completely disconnect from it at first, at least, because a good exercise to do once you become aware of the programming methodologies is to actually look for them in the programming. This is going to bring them from a subconscious level up to the conscious level. So in other words, watch what they're doing in television, but from an awake perspective. Study the technique once you're aware that it's there. And when you see it, then it's like being able to see one of those hidden pictures, like a picture-in-picture, or finding, they do the two comparison pictures, and there's something that's a little bit changed in the second one, and it's like a puzzle that you have to try to find what little items have been changed in the second picture. When you first look at it, they look almost identical, but then after you found the items, you could look at it very easily and see exactly where those hidden items were at. Very easily. The same thing is true for allegory or subconscious programming when it comes to any kind of media. At first, it just bypasses the conscious mind, and it goes right to the subconscious level. But after you become aware of the technique and the pattern that they have been using, then you look at it again, and it's almost like that's all you can see is that technique or that pattern or that hidden or nested message or that piece of symbolism or that frequency or that way of speaking that they used. It jumps out at you like a sore thumb. So I would suggest to people you want to actually engage in that kind of media to actually pick it apart, break it down, and look at the techniques that they used. That will bring them up to an even higher conscious level so that they will have, again, less and less of an effect at the subconscious level. Now, that's not to say you want to just subject yourself to junk media all the time just to be doing this. I would say, of course, limit your television watching, but in the small amount of time that you would subject yourself to it for a brief time, it would be for this educational purpose of trying to bring their technique up to a higher conscious level, again, so you could see exactly their methodology of what they're doing to influence the mind at a subconscious level.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you say it's at a subconscious level, and it is for the most part. I completely agree. But it's not just in one way they're doing it, is it? We've got flicker rates that they're using. We've got the flashing images, and there's a very good film called They Live, which encodes the letters. They flash the letters quicker than the eye can see them, but they go straight into the brain. We've got the frequencies, in other words, the light emitted from the actual television screens. That's also encoding several other messages. It's on a multiple level, and you've also got the electromagnetic spectrum that's coming off the machine as well. It's multi-phase.
That's right.
It's not just one.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have the flicker frequency, you have the colors that they use for specific applications and purposes, sound and music. used to elicit certain emotional responses. You have symbolism employed constantly. You have something called neuro-linguistic programming, or very specifically chosen patterns of speech to elicit a certain emotional response or reaction, or a way of perceiving the information that is given. So, and then again, the physical technology in the room emitting an electromagnetic field, etc. All of these things combine to act as an assault against the subconscious mind, and basically embed whatever message they're trying to get into the viewer. And it's very, very it's a powerful, effective tool, which is why they use it, and they don't deviate from that methodology because it works for them.
Yeah, exactly. I found the point that I was trying to get to with regards to the intent. Anytime you're dealing inside a legal, the facade system they like to use, feigning itself as church, when it comes down to the intent, that is what they are after. Never mind the corruption, all the rest of the crap that goes along with the legal system. It's all nonsense. We know what it is. They're always looking for the intent. It is never about what has actually happened. It is what was the intent. I've discussed this before in terms of first degree murder, second degree, third, and whatever, right? And of course, where the intent was, say, premeditated, it carries a lot more, quote, punishment, unquote. So I'm just trying to illustrate to people that what matters most in Electric Universe is the intent, and how are you looking at it? What is your perspective? And how are you looking for a solution, or are you caught up in the rage of the machine, thinking that something has done you wrong, that you had nothing to do with it, given the fact that you were there? So I just wanted to bring that intent aspect into it, where every action that we create is causal action from the ethereal through the physical realm in that vibration.
That's exactly right. And, that is ultimately how we're creating what we experience in the world. Our intent goes into motion, and it becomes what we do in life. It becomes our actions. Those behaviors are ultimately creating the experience of the world, the aggregate of all of those behaviors in all the people that were around, and we're a part of that dynamic as well. This is why the laws of attraction, have been stated as that which we, the energy which we emit will be the energy that we attract into our lives, or we reap what we sow, or for every action there exists an equal and opposite reaction. The laws of attraction have been stated in all of those ways and many other ways. Ultimately, we have to understand that this aggregate behavior is the causal factor of what we're collectively creating. And that's the problem, is many people are trapped in an inability to see the conditioned and addictive patterns of their behavior in the world that are ultimately creating nothing but suffering in their lives. And they're addicted and attached to those behaviors because breaking free of them, breaking free of the conditioning that underlies those patterns of behavior is an uncomfortable process. Once you do that, you realize ultimately you're truly responsible for everything that you create in your life. And on a subconscious level, people recognize that's true, and that's why they want to stay in the conditioning. They don't want that responsibility. They don't want to admit to that total responsibility. Ultimately, we need to come out of this thinking about everything in terms of their effects. That's like looking at the symptom of a disease and trying to treat the symptom. You're in doing that with when it comes to natural law, you're only dealing with the already manifested realities, and they're formed already. It's too late to change what already has occurred. They have formed because of their underlying causes that went to work in the world and created the effect. So you can't deal on the plane of effects to create change. There's no power to affect any change at that level of working with perception, working with, attempting to create any change in consciousness there. It's impossible. Human consciousness is trapped at looking at the effect. It's that old adage of, we want to continue to do the same thing and expect a different result, which is the definition of insanity. It's equally as insane to try to create a change by rearranging, the mechanisms of effects. We can't do that. We have to raise our consciousness to a higher level, and that is to what is known as the plane of causality. We have to get to the why, the underlying reason that the effect had been created in the first place. Once you understand the why, that mechanism that's actually creating what we are experiencing and observing in the world, that's when we get to the causal factor and in there is ultimate empowerment. That's where all the power to affect change in the world lies. And therefore, that's where human consciousness has to go. It has to go to that deep underlying level known as the plane of causality, which ultimately gives birth to the manifested realities or the effects that we experience in the world.
Absolutely. Again, you've hit the nail on the head there, because you actually mentioned the Holy Grail, and that is actually what it is. That information that you just relayed to the people there actually will give them the Holy Grail to understand how this world around us is being manifested from the past into the future in order to control the masses and control the level of reality that we experience. And that's exactly the type of thing that Kate, I, and yourself, for examples, just some of the examples, are actually trying to bring to people's conscious minds, because it's within that consciousness that we can consciously say, right, now I understand what you're doing, I understand how you're doing it, and now what we've got to do is get people aware of what it is and become conscious themselves, so that we can co-create a beautiful, different future of our choice, not of the Illuminati, just for one example.
That's exactly right. And Tony, I love the way that you referred to that information as the Holy Grail, because that is indeed what it is. If you really think about what was said there, we're talking about the why, which is the source of all power. And, why, yes, it's spelled W-H-Y in the English language, but if you just consider the letter Y, that's the Grail. There it is, the chalice, the cup. It's right there. The shape of the letter Y is a Grail.
Yeah, and just to carry on that whole concept for a little bit, you've heard of the Masonic dealing with the double cross. You'll see that in their symbologies. I'm going to tie a couple things together. I just kind of want to see where you go with this. This is how Kate thinks. When you speak of the double cross, I can go to a lot of different areas. One of the favorites is the XX, or the key chromosome. The Greek letter X is key. Then you've got another Greek letter that they like to use for Rome, which is Rho, so the key Rho. Symbology, and of course, what's the capital of Egypt? Cairo, Kiro. The XY chromosome is the male, or the fallen, in that the rib of Adam was the lower half of the second dos equus that was removed, thereby crippling creation into a chalice. And I could go on for. That's why I want to sit and have a chat with you sometime to show you where my brain actually sits. But it's all there.
Let's not forget Chi and Rho are the first two letters of the name of Christ in Greek, Christos.
Exactly. It's so...
And that connects back with the Grail.
Oh, hugely. Again, and you look at Santa Bonacci's work, Bill Donahue, your work, the stuff that Tony and I and others have been doing as well. And it's all tunneling down into all roads. Look at the Rhodes Scholar, right? Rho is liquid breath or liquid spirit. It's a very special Greek letter. That's why they have the key Rho. You can take words. Well, I do anyway. Take them right down to the very base of what the symbol represents. Like the letter C is love. It's also 100, or the 1. It's also the 528 hertz middle C, and it's also the O that is open to creation to allow love in and out, right? That's why it is love.
Exactly.
It goes on and on.
And just saying the word see means to see, to be able to see something right in front of you, So all of those are symbolic resonators, with opened awareness, opened up consciousness, exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't a mistake in Hermeticism when they say it in one sentence. those with eyes to see and ears to hear. And what it takes really in order to start grasping those pearls of wisdom instead of being the sign to get thrown at, is when you put both of those elements together, where you can be deceived either sonically or visually, but when you put them together, your deception level drops way off the grid in that you see and hear it together. With me, I'm a musician, so it's always been a sonic kind of world with me. I don't see letters in as much as I hear the sounds. Like literally when I'm writing, and that's what I do, I ritual a lot, right? Ritual. And that's how I manifest the sound. I have the sound first and I bring it into a visual so I can correlate it. And I'm going at it backwards, I guess, than most people. I kind of broke the visual spell, but I've never really had that. It was always sonic with me. But, the clues are there.
And much of what you're saying resonates with what is known as green language. It's being able to interpret symbols in an interconnected way and language in a very powerful, resonant, and interconnected way, such that you can see all of these different cross connections between them and understand how these different symbols and wordplay all fit together to ultimately be calling us out of our ignorance, calling us out of our darkness, and out of the very controlled way that we have been conditioned to perceive reality and see things in a completely different and interconnected way. And that this form of language called green language was basically described and used and written with by alchemists of the ancient world. And they called it green language for a very specific reason. The green frequency is the frequency in visible light that is the middle of the visible spectrum that the eye is capable of perceiving, that the human eye can see. And that midpoint is considered the point of the frequency of balance. And it is the color that nature provides in the greatest abundance for human beings. Ultimately, all of the land on the earth is well, anymore it's not becoming more green. It's actually going in a more toward a brown and brownish and reddish direction because of the pollution that what man is doing to the earth. But in its untouched form, nature provides green in the greatest abundance for human beings to live in on the land. And the green plants are the most powerful and nutrient-dense foods for man to consume that help boost the immune system and basically keep our bodies running efficiently. That energy, the green energy, the green frequency, and the green that is found so abundantly in nature is actually the frequency of of love energy. It is the balance, the energy of balance, love, and nature. And that's why the occultists decide to use green in American money. They're trying to equate that with this form of balance and true care and holistic integration, the coming together of two seeming opposites or two halves in the middle, the joining, the chemical wedding, if you will, of the balanced left and right brain hemispheres in conjunction with the heart. And again, the color of the heart chakra traditionally in the Vedic system of chakras is also green, of the Anahata chakra, which is the heart chakra. And this green frequency is what they're alluding to in green language, which is much of what you're basically connecting to there. That's why they called it green, because for those to be able to perceive it, they would have to have first come into a certain level of balance in their own consciousness and in their own heart to be able to open their mind, open their awareness enough to be able to see these interconnected word plays and word puns that are used in green language and to make sense of it. So again, green language, one will start to be able to perceive once there is enough internal balance in the individual to connect with those resonating frequencies that are actually contained within the language that we speak on a daily basis called English.
Absolutely. I only have one comment here, Tony, then take it. I love when people use the word balance, which I have always heard as Baal Lance. You know how they worship Baal, right? I can give you a whole myriad of background on that. But when one gets the Baal Lance, one has found the Spear of Destiny.
That's right.
You know, these are why I go in these directions, and the Sonics have led me home every time.
That's right.
I was just going to comment what I was going to actually do, as well as, I mean, absolutely correct. Balance is the key, but the green is like the fulcrum, isn't it? The point on which everything else balances. You go full one side, you get the spectrum, the light spectrum, for example, on one end, and then you go full the other, and you get the light spectrum to the other end. But the reality of this...
Up a little bit, Tony. Tony, you're breaking up a little bit. Can you go back over that again?
Yeah, I was just saying, I was calling green a bit like the fulcrum, with all the other colours balancing off from both sides. One colour spectrum going to one side, another colour spectrum going to the other, from red to ultraviolet or whatever. The point being that whole spectrum's there, but we only see a little bit of that spectrum. Our eyes are only tuned into that particular that frequency, in close association to the green, which is the fulcrum or the balancing point. And there's actually a lot more to the world around us that we don't actually see with our eyes or interface with our mind, or even come into contact with, unless we're actually meditating or tuning into those frequencies. I think that's a good lead off to the next part.
Okay, a little dead air there. Are you still there, Mark?
Okay.
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No worries.
I actually accidentally muted myself. Absolutely. That's what it is all ultimately about. It's the fulcrum point of our attention. And again, what we are going to put our attention on is ultimately what we care about. That's where care lies. Our care lies in how we're going to focus our attention, because ultimately then our behavior is going to be determined by what we put our attention on. So the green has always been a resonator for care. Again, heart energy, love energy. It's the center of the self. The heart is the very center of the human being. In the ancient Egyptian tradition, they always considered that the heart was the seat of the soul. Certainly not the brain, but the heart itself. And in that tradition, the heart was also the symbol of truth, because if our reality and our attention isn't focused upon the truth, everything ultimately falls apart. In the afterlife realm, the ancient Egyptians had a belief that the heart was actually, since it was the center of the soul in the human being, was weighed against the feather of the Egyptian goddess of truth and justice and balance and natural law, who is called Ma'at, M-A-A-T. And if your heart if your heart outweighed her feather, you would kind of be recycled and absorbed and perhaps not allowed to pass through to the higher realms, and have to learn more lessons here on the earth. But if your heart balanced with her feather, then you would be able to go to another realm, which they termed Duat, and to be reborn as a star of ever burning brightness and energy, to then give birth to and nourish an entire solar system of your own. That was one of the Egyptians' beliefs about the afterlife. But again, it can't be interpreted literally. It's an allegory for that our heart has to be in a place of balance, and it has to direct our attention toward wanting to get to the truth, toward wanting to act in the world in a just way. One of the other beliefs of that system in the ancient Al-Khamisian tradition was that when you arrived after death at the place where the soul would be judged regarding what you did in the world and how you interacted with other people, you would have to give an account in the negative sense, not in the positive of what you did, but you would basically have to kind of confess or give an account of that which you did not do. And they would basically go down a list of questions, which they called the negative confessions of Ma'at. And Ma'at, this goddess of balance and truth and justice, would basically ask, did you do these things that are harmful to another, that cause harm? And you have to be able to say, no, I did not do it. So it's all in the negative. It's not about, like, give me an account of what you did do. It's saying, here's all the things that cause harm. Did you do any of these things? And if you did not, then, the soul was considered to be clean or harmonious or balanced, and you were said to have incorporated the lessons that this three-dimensional earth realm, this life, has to offer, and you could kind of then go on to the next level of reality from there. So again, I love the incorporation of what is called apotheosis, or saying no, the negative aspect, looking at all the things that cause harm and saying no to those things, not doing them. People always look for solutions in, well, what do I need to do? So much of the solution to what's going on in the world in human consciousness lies in what we need to not do, what we need to stop doing. And I find the negative or apophatic pathway to the truth much more empowering than what is called the positive or the cataphatic pathway. We need to really understand what actions are not rights and stop doing those things. What actions cause harm to another and pull back from those behaviors. That's an apophatic approach to a behavioral change. Many people are very resistant to that approach because they've been conditioned that you don't say, don't do this. And this is a very new age conditioning factor that I think has done a great disservice to humanity. It is all about what we need not to do. We're doing so many things and engaging in so many behaviors that we have no right to engage in on an individual level. And because societal institutions tell us that it's okay to do it because it's within the parameters of so-called law, lowercase l, law in double quotes, man's law. We're not talking about real laws of the universe here, but contrived and invented commands made by man to basically serve small groups of people's interests. Because we're told it's okay under that system, which is largely, almost entirely based in immorality, many people think that they have rights which they don't have. And many people believe that they can stop other people from exercising rights which they do have. And this is the conundrum that the police and military forces of the entire world find themselves in, constantly giving over their energy and their body to serve a corrupt and immoral system that is telling them that what they're doing is okay and right and that they have special rights that they do not have. So one of the ways to get out of that form of mind control is through this apophatic process, which is to really look at what rights are and what rights are not, and to say, well, if this action is causing harm to another or is stopping someone else, attempting to stop someone else from exercising their inherent natural rights, then I should not engage in that behavior under any circumstances because it is by definition a wrong, and therefore I do not have a right as an individual to enact that behavior. That apophatic approach, while it's very discouraged by most people, again, because they've been conditioned not to look at things in the negative or apophatic sense, it is nonetheless the most liberating and powerful approach when it comes to understanding what rights are and what rights are not, and to ultimately free ourselves, free our minds from this identified and attached belief system that tells us here's what you do have a right to do when that happens to be untrue, and here's what you don't have a right to do when that happens to be true. So we're seeing things because of all of these conditioning factors through all the different institutions. of course, the legal institutions, the political institutions, and, of course, the educational, so-called educational institutions, which are nothing more than indoctrination centers. We're seeing all of these inherent natural rights in a completely imbalanced and really kind of on top of their head kind of way. It's completely upside down in most cases. The apophatic approach to understanding rights can really help us to get out of that mental conditioning. And when we do that, then our behaviors are going to come into balance. We're not going to be contributing to that negative causal factor that's basically putting the world into deeper and deeper change, and we're going to start to become part of the solution and the healing process to create true and positive and lasting change for that's real. And that is going to help humanity to truly better itself as we progress forward into the future.
Couldn't agree more. Again, it's what is your perspective? Are you the gladiator in the arena, or one of the screaming Goonies up in the stands with the bread and circuses? When you start to look at things from both sides now, then you get a better perspective on it. I have a caller here that I mentioned earlier before we went on the air, Mark. Martin, are you there?
Alive and buzzing.
Alive and buzzing, yeah. Well, say hi to Mark. You might know a little thing or two about Mark.
Oh yeah, hi Mark. How you doing?
Hi Martin. How are you?
Pretty good. I've gone through all of your podcasts from 0 right up until 132, I believe it is now.
Fantastic.
I've gone over a few of them over and over and over again. And when you're talking about the apophatic sense of the idea of knowing what is negative as opposed to knowing what is positive, well, positive to me is like everything other than what you've distilled down into one word, theft.
That's right. That's right. It's that
theft,
simple,
anything
isn't it?
you take in, yeah. So it's so simple.
People ask me for people ask me for all the time. Give me a soundbite definition of natural law. When they say, well, what is natural law? How does it operate? How do I understand its effects? I'll say, well, check out this work. Here's a book. Here's some podcasts, and they're like, oh, I don't have time for all that. I don't want to have to sit there that long. How can I get an understanding of it, more simply than that? I direct them mostly to my podcasts on the topic because I feel I did, a fairly condensed job of really, breaking it down, analyzing it, and giving people the fundamentals, and then pointing them to some resources that they can do deeper research into it on their own. But, I gave a basic soundbite definition that natural law, or what I call now the spiritual laws of creation, they're the universal, meaning they operate everywhere in the universe, non-man-made, no flesh and blood being made these laws or put them into effect in creation, binding and immutable conditions. So they're in effect, you're bound by them, you're governed by them. They're immutable. They cannot be changed by man, by any wishful thinking on man's part, that they just simply go away or don't exist. So they're universal, non-man-made, binding, and immutable conditions that ultimately govern the consequences of our behavior. We have free will. This is a free will universe. We're in a free will zone. But we do not have free will without consequence. We have our thoughts, our emotions. They ultimately shape and determine the behaviors that we take. So then we act, and then there are consequences for those actions. We can never act without consequence. It's an impossibility. And we are always responsible for what we create through our actions. So then people would say, well, that's not even enough. That's not, that's too much data. I want something I can say to somebody fast, like, give me a simple sentence, And I thought that was kind of pretty simple. You could probably explain it in 2 minutes maybe. What did it take there, 2-3 minutes? But it all boils down, natural law boils down to 2 simple words. Don't steal. That's it. Every form of a transgression, every form of aggression that you can make against your neighbor in one form or another comes down to a form of theft. If you really sit and think about it, Every harm that someone else did to another, they took something that did not belong to them, whether it was someone's life, whether it was someone's property, whether it was someone's rights. Okay? You took that which was not yours. So natural law ultimately boils down to two words: don't steal. That's what this prison that's called the earth, and that's what it is right now, is a prison. That's why the people are incarcerated in this prison, because they're all here to learn not to steal. This is a prison of thieves. That's what the earth basically is. It's a prison of thieves. And the ultimate way out of the prison is to learn what is yours and what is not yours, and don't take that which does not belong to you. That's the way out of this prison.
Yeah, it boils down to, as I've been trying to share anyway, and I take full responsibility for being here for a reason. The free will, the ultimate maxim for me is free will choice. And when you make a choice, an intentful choice within self to do something that trespasses on another, in their free will choice, therein lies the theft. You're stealing identity, you're stealing energy, you're stealing something. And it's really, that is in a nutshell. And yeah, you did it very well in a few minutes there. Unfortunately, most of the people have a hard time accepting any responsibility. They're too busy looking outside of themselves to blame something. And you can see that heavily manifest in especially the police state mentality that is being, thrust upon the masses. But again, you get what you wish for. So I would be very careful in that sleepiness of not doing your due diligence to find yourself within this game and how you play in your role. Because we're all weaving together here. We're all weaving a tapestry, and every act that everyone does has a ripple effect throughout that. I mean, everyone has got the wings of a butterfly, and depending on how hard they flap, creates a tsunami somewhere eventually. It's a ripple effect. Ebb and flow. Law of correspondence. This is Hermeticism at its finest.
That's exactly right. And the choices that we make on an individual level, again, become the aggregate as a society. So people will say, well, how is me changing like that going to help to change the world? Because you're no longer part of the negative aggregate of behaviors if you stop doing those behaviors. It's like, if you had a pool that you wanted to not have be hot when someone was going to jump in it, but 10,000 people had to come with a cup of water at a certain temperature and pour it into the pool before that person was going to jump in it, and you didn't want the person burned, you can't come with hot water. You have to make a choice. I'm going to come with body temperature water that's going to feel good when the person jumps into it. But if everybody came with boiling water, that person's going to get scalded and die when they jump into the pool. So everybody involved, or at least enough of them, which is, again, why this is called a quantum effect. The word quantum in Latin means an amount, okay? Simply an amount of something. And, if you come with that small amount, you come with that small amount of water, and it's, a good temperature, you can pour it in there, and you, in the aggregate, help to balance the temperature of that pool so that the person would not be scalded. That's the same way that the world works. Unfortunately, too many people in the world are saying, well, my little thing of boiling water, changing it to room temperature water is not going to have any effect, so I'll just continue with the boiling water. And too many people are doing that, and ultimately, unfortunately, we're all going in the pool together, and we're all going to get burned. So that's a way of looking at how natural law works in the aggregate. You have to pull back your negative behavior such that you're no longer creating the aggregate effect, and then teach people how to do the same. That's the only way out of this mess from where we're at. Because, again, too many people are attached to these behaviors that ultimately create nothing but suffering. See, it's all about the knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. We have to understand what rights are, and we have to understand what wrongs are. It's really as simple as that, and it sounds so strange because it's like, I never thought that I would be a person who is would be attempting to teach people the difference between right and wrong. As simple as that sounds, as strange as that sounds, it still sounds strange to me that that's the nature of the work that I'm doing. And that's the problem, that so few people really understand what a right is. It's sad how few really grasp it at a deep, fundamental level. Once we have that knowledge, that's what conscience is. People also find it strange that conscience is knowledge. They don't equate those things. They think conscience is something other than knowledge. The exercise of conscience is behavior, but conscience itself is simply knowledge. That's all it is. Conscience is the knowledge, the possession of the definitive knowledge of the difference between right and wrong. That's all having conscience is. It's right in the word, actually. If we even look at the word conscience, the prefix con, C-O-N, in Latin, means with or together. And then the word science is derived from the Latin verb sciere, sciere in Latin, which means to know or to understand. So when we put them together, conscience means common knowledge, to know together, okay, to know at the same time, okay? It's common sense, and that's what humanity is lacking. Humanity is lacking conscience. They're lacking common sense. They don't really definitively possess the difference between right and wrong, because these concepts have been obscured and obfuscated in people's minds over time. The exercise of conscience is something altogether different than just having a conscience. Having conscience means you have knowledge of right and wrong. Exercising conscience means now I'm using will. I'm using my willpower to engage the right. So the exercise of conscience is the willful choosing of right action over wrong action. That's saying, well, if I'm going to do the right thing here, I can't bring boiling water to that pool. Okay, I have to bring the room temperature water so that it doesn't affect this other human being who's going in the water. Okay, and that's willfully choosing to do something different, even if no one else is choosing that action. That's what the exercise of conscience is. So once you have the knowledge of the definitive difference between right and wrong, okay, then you can act upon it and choose the right over the wrong. That's the exercise of conscience. And that's where we need to get people to. Yeah.
I think you just answered a question I was going to ask you earlier, and that was a new term that I had heard on, I think it was Red Ice, free will and true will. So what you're saying is, through the exercise of free will, when you have conscious or a certain level of consciousness, and you exercise that effectively in conjunction with natural law, you're exercising true will. Is that not right?
Exactly. Beautiful. That is exactly true, perfectly stated. Wonderful.
I just wanted to share, I know Tony wants to jump in here. When you were talking of that, I got this beautiful visual of Pinocchio with Jiminy Cricket, his conscience, walking outside of him. And what we have to basically do is take our own Jiminy Crickets within instead of leaving our conscience out there vulnerable to be stepped on by someone else.
Behold a pale canvas.
Yeah. Behold the white canvas indeed, and it's about it's about time that we take our canvases back instead of letting everyone else paint on them. I've wrote lots of stuff on this subject, but it's taking back our lives. Tony?
Just briefly as well, that conscience leads to consciousness, which is where we need to take it.
Absolutely correct. Gaining more knowledge about what we have a right to do and what we do not have a right to do ultimately makes us more conscious beings. It awakens us to a greater and greater extent so that we're not operating at a level of programming. And I look at this as the development of the soul. We have the seed or the spark of the divine within us, but we have to water it and make it grow. And that's what developing the soul is all about. It doesn't just happen on its own. It takes care and attention. We have to tend to it over time. And that is what the flowering of consciousness is all about. It's gaining that knowledge of right and wrong, and then it's acting willfully to choose the right over the wrong in every moment of our existence, and that is doing the true will. So beautifully stated.
Yeah, Tony, another comment?
Yeah. Again, you're just nailing everyone to the back of the neck. So this is awesome stuff. I'm really pleased with everybody who's listening tonight because you know,
we're gonna have a hell of a time arguing with each other here. You know that, eh?
We're in hot water now.
We're
on the same page and waiting for others to catch up to us. You know.
Well, that's why we brought buckets of ice water to the pool to, you know, start to cool it down a little bit. Now we can get more close. Yeah.
Well, I find us going to the supermarket, talking to someone in the line cashier, for instance. You know, I've got to know all their names, so now when I go there and they don't have their badges on, I still call them by names, and then I'll see them at other places, and I'll call them by names. Boy, does that ever take them off guard. But we're having meaningful interactions with another human being. Like, I mean, why waste that opportunity? You know? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's about. The more you can communicate with people and the more you can help them just take that one little step, they think, oh, crikey, you know, something's changed, something's altered, something's moved. Oh, crikey, I didn't realize that. And you bring something back to their conscious mind, and then that will help them just that little bit more become more conscious of who they are, what they do, and how that affects everybody in the world around them.
Exactly. I just wanted to give a comparison of the true will choice and the free will choice. Like people that would come to Outside the Box to listen for the first time would be making a free will choice to tune in and see what's there. If it resonated with them and if they wanted to listen to the show again, then they would be dealing with a true will choice because something was resonating and something was picking up in the positive. Again, I stand as an observer at all points, and that I only have two things that I say to myself. My own Jiminy Cricket is that something I would do, or is that something I would not do? And that becomes my very conscious choice and aware decision, trying to evaluate as much as possible, you know, the ripple effect of, you know, even like doing these shows, for example, what kind of ripple effects are being caused by what we are trying to share. You know, I mean, we don't always get it right, but we don't always get it wrong either. So again, this is the learning curve and the learning process that we're all going through equally in our free will choice, moving to that true will choice. That's a beautiful way to put it, you guys, the way you've done that.
Well, I'd like to share a personal anecdote regarding how our putting this information out there can have powerful ripple effects, if I may. You know, I often get down on the whole state of the world, as I'm sure we all do, seeing what's taking place in our world these days. But you hear some really positive and empowering stories as well occasionally. And in putting together the Free Your Mind conference, the Free Your Mind 2 conference, which is coming up here in Philadelphia in April, we got some advertisement postcards made, really beautifully made full-color postcards, 5x7, that we're distributing all over Philadelphia already, and we'll really ratchet up that effort even more as the conference approaches. But one of the speakers lives in New York City. His name is Curtis Davis. I'm not sure if you gentlemen are familiar with him. He does a show on the Occult Network called Occult Science Radio, an excellent program. And he's going to be a speaker at the conference. So a couple of us on the organizational team went up to New York to visit him and to, give him some of the postcards to distribute. Now, I was on Curtis's show in August. The day that I was on, I must have been in a particularly disturbed mood regarding where things are headed. I believe I was hearing a lot of police state news at the time, and I was really bringing the hammer down very hard in a harsh way on his show on the dominator mindset and the police and military in general, and talking about all the ways that they violate people's rights that they have absolutely no right to do, and believing that they're doing the good at all times simply because they're told they're allowed to do this and it's for the general good, quote unquote. And I was really getting into how if you're following anything but truth, you cannot be really, truly exercising conscience. If you're following someone else, you can't be following you cannot be following conscience, which is the definitive knowledge of right and wrong. That's the only thing that we have to follow. If you're following orders, it is an impossibility. Even if you happen to take an action that is in harmony with natural law by accident, if you're following orders, you cannot be following conscience. It's an impossibility. Doing one thing implies that you are not doing another. If I'm following conscience, my actions are determined by knowledge of conscience, okay, then I am not following anyone else's orders. I am aligning my behavior with truth, with natural law, with something that is inherent to creation in the universe, and I'm aligning my behavior with that higher will. And I am absolutely not following anyone's orders. So if I'm following anyone in the world, anyone in the universe's three-dimensional orders, being given from their mouth to my ears, and then I say, yes, I will follow that command, then by definition, I cannot be doing the work of conscience. I cannot be doing work that is guided by conscience. It is absolutely antithetical to the entire concept of conscience. And I was really hammering on that concept on Occult Science Radio back in August. And what the host, Curtis, did not tell me at the time was that he was in his house in New York City, was actually seated there conducting the interview with a friend of his who was, at the time, a New York City police officer. And he had him, with headphones listening into the show, and the gentleman was really deeply listening to everything I was talking about natural law and conscience and the police state measures and how the dark occultists actually see the individuals who they get to do their will and their bidding. And Curtis said that, he saw it was hitting him very hard, and, maybe he was having a hard time with it at first, but he saw that he, really made an effort to sit and listen, and to take it in and really think about it. He allowed it to come into himself. And he said he hadn't seen him in a couple months after that, and then he saw him months later, and the gentleman informed him that he had quit the police force. And he said, wow, you were a cop for like 9 years. He's like, why did you suddenly decide to, up and quit? And he's like, well, I'm doing something else now, and I'm not involved in that anymore. And he said, what really did it was the night that I was over your house listening to your program where you had that gentleman talking about conscience and natural law and, police state and everything. And he's like, after I heard that show, I went back, I downloaded it again, I listened to it again a couple of times, and I couldn't sleep at night. He said it made him so uncomfortable that he literally could not sleep at night anymore doing what he was doing. So conscience was born in him. He actually, recognized the wrongness of what he was involved in, regardless of what his intent, his personal intentions were for wanting to get involved. He recognized that if you're following orders, you can't be following conscience. And if that's part of your job description, then you need to not do that anymore. And he actually made that decision and stopped doing it. He engaged apophasis, saying no. He said, no, I know that I am not following conscience, I'm following orders, and I'm not going to do this anymore. And for me, for a person like that, that's true courage. That he has more courage than 10,000 of his fellow officers that will sit and follow orders. More courage than 10,000 of them put together. And, I would shake that person's hand and say, that's a real human being. That's a real man, and that's a person with true courage. Because to do that against all of your predetermined conditioning, the prior conditioning that you underwent, and the reaction that might elicit from peers and family members, spouse, children, whatever, regardless of what the personal circumstances, he actually engaged the true will through true courage. and did the right thing and engaged conscience. And again, that's just one way that what we do can have a ripple effect, and those ripple effects can build and build. Once we get that resonating, it'll build in a resonant effect, and maybe it will take hold and open up in a much bigger way for more people to create a quantum effect of real change throughout the world. We can continue to do this work and apply more pressure and use our will in that regard. I hesitate. I stop short of using the word hope that it can happen. We need to engage and make that happen by more of us getting involved in this work.
Absolutely spot on. Personally, Kate and I are doing like 7 or 8 shows plus a week, getting this information out to the public. So we're absolutely flat out, balls to the floor, if you like, doing as much as we can to do that. But I love the way that
it's tremendous that you do that much internet radio a week. I think if I did that, I wouldn't have an ounce of energy in my body left. I do my show one day a week, and I find it draining. But that's incredible that you do that much work. That is just phenomenal. I mean, my hat is off to you.
Thank you.
It's off to you as well. We're all doing our part, regardless of how big a role we want to play. It's it's getting the word out there. That's all that matters. Tony?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But one of the things I was going to focus on just for a second is it's perfectly in tune with what you just said. But the reality of the situation is the person that's actually carrying out the orders, even though they know it within themselves that they're doing wrong. Let me give you an example. A policeman in a riot squad battering the heck out of people that are protesting for their freedoms. The people that are actually on the end of the baton are carrying more karmic weight and carrying more karmic responsibility than they're aware of, versus the person that told them to stand in the line and hit people when they come towards them. Yes. And that's a karmic measurement of something. And I'd like you just very briefly, because we've got a whole list of questions to go through. So if you could briefly give us a quick touch on that note, because it's very, very poignant.
Yes. This is very powerful to come to this level of understanding, and it can be very controversial for people because they've been so conditioned that, that's just someone doing their job, and that's a totally unacceptable way of looking at it. As you stated very accurately, the person who is carrying out the order is always more morally culpable and is going to absorb more karmic debt and responsibility for actually taking that immoral action, doing that immoral behavior, than the person who whispered in their ear and told them that it was okay to do it. So I'm not saying that there is no moral culpability on the part of the order giver. There most certainly is. But it is not as severe. It is not as deeply severe and consequential as the person who is directly taking the action based on those orders. So when you ask the question, and I encourage people, ask this in a social setting, who's more morally culpable? The key word being more morally culpable. That has to be emphasized. Both parties are morally culpable for harm that's being done, but who's more morally culpable or responsible? The order giver or the order follower? And just see what, where the dynamic is, maybe amongst a group of friends or family members, and I find that it's almost usually a 50-50 split, and you get in heated debates about it a lot of times. But there is a correct answer to that question, and it is unwaveringly, invariably, the person who is taking the action is always the most morally culpable.
Couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. Again, this comes down to the self-responsibility. We've got about 30 minutes left here. I just want to touch on one thing. The word keeps coming up. Actually, 2 words that have come up a couple of times are order and command. Now, when one offers a command, one is co-manning the position. When one offers an order, and I take the sound out of this, you've got the aura, AU, which is gold on the periodic table. I'm just going to show you where I go with these things. So when you have the or, that is, for me, gold, because it comes out of the or, Ra, which is the gold of the Son of God in terms of Ra, right, the Egyptian aspect.
And or also means light in Hebrew as well.
You got it.
Yes.
And then we have der, which is the in German, also, which is the root in the English of theos, or theology, which is God. So when someone is giving, this is why we have to take our own command. We have to command our own helm, get that duality back into balance, command our own helm, where we create our own hors d'oeuvres, where we become the light of God. That's how I see it in order.
I love the green language aspects. Brilliant.
That's where I live. I'm Irish. I had to. Home turf.
For when you were talking about moral, more all. You know.
More light. Yeah. That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah, tell me about it. It's just digging it up and finding the diamonds or the glittery bits or the gold in them there hills. You know, that's the point. Okay, one of the other things that we talk about, I mean, we really are on this program outside the box. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the occulted, or as you said, perfectly correctly, hidden, and the history of the human race. This has been approached on lots of different levels, but to my knowledge, the human race itself is built up of various races, and if we look on a genetic level, we can find there's actually DNA in our own DNA helix that shouldn't be there. More so than that, we can actually find that there are areas of our DNA or specific genomes that have been spliced together, which cannot happen in nature. Now, yes. I wonder, number one, have you got a comment on that? And number two, well, it's up to you. It's how deep you want to go, really. Over to you, Mark.
Yes. This is something I have not gotten too deeply into in the work that I've brought forward on my radio show, podcasts, and videos, but I will be going into these places in the near future, because I'm going to take my show in that direction very shortly and start talking about things regarding human origins and possible involvement of other beings in our destiny as well. Yes.
Just something I wanted to add right now. This show is called Outside the Box, and there is nothing off limits here. And
sure.
The listeners, our listeners, I've been doing radio for almost 5 years now. Same show, Outside the Box, different radio stations, what have you. And I got to tell you something. This is an open door invitation. Whenever you want to do a show, if you've got something you want to test drive, you bring it here, and we'll test drive it for you.
Fantastic. I'll keep that in mind for sure. So to go back to Tony's question, yes, there are areas of our DNA that are non-coding, and we don't understand what they're for. Scientists have previously called this junk DNA, which it is most certainly not. I would look at it more as inactivated DNA, or possibly deliberately deactivated or made to be non-coding. There is, again, areas that show clear markers of having been engineered or spliced together, and very clear evidence that this happened over an incredibly short space of time, that so-called biological evolution should not be able to create that kind of a change in that short amount of time. And I'm specifically talking about human chromosome number 2, which many genetic scientists take as a clear example of the proof of Darwinian macrobiological evolution. I do not see it in that way at all. I see this as clear evidence that there is some type of deliberate manipulation of the human genome at some point in our ancient past. And you can speculate endlessly about what did that, but when we look at the human genome as well, we see that it has more anomalies in terms of negative genetic conditions than just about any other species on planet Earth. All other species don't show these types of negative genetic conditions. And to me, that is also an indicator that there's something that is unnatural going on in the human genetic stream. Now, one of the things that I feel that this created is the condition of human psychopathy, of primary human psychopathy. Secondary psychopathy is created by conditions. But primary psychopathy, I believe, is one of these conditions that is created through this genetic tampering that was done to mankind in the ancient past. See, if you're attempting to genetically modify a lower species, a species that you would consider lower than yourself, okay, and you're not too particularly concerned about the work that you're doing to the other being. You know, like we genetically modify animals in a lab to do certain testing on them, test chemicals on them, test medicines on them. You know, so many scientific research organizations, medical research organizations, they experiment on mice or guinea pigs or even cats and dogs and goats and other animals, okay? I mean, I know this firsthand because years ago I worked in a biomedical research facility. It's something I haven't really talked about much, but it happens that I did computer work for a biomedical research, in a biomedical research building. So I saw what they do firsthand with a lot of these animals. And it's one of the reasons I no longer work there, of course. But, you know, in understanding how some of this genetic work is done, you cannot be the technology right now does not exist for absolutely precise, exact genetic splicing. It is not done at an atomic level. It is done at the chemical level. Even the molecular level, it's not quite at the molecular level. It is done at a chemical level, which means you need chemical. It's done with chemical cutting. When you do that, you can't be certain about the expression that's going to take place when you put that gene sequence in culture. Okay, and again, I'm not a genetic scientist, but I have a very rudimentary layperson's understanding of how this is done. You have to let it express and find out what expresses over time. I am friends with a genetic scientist, actually, who confirmed that I have a good basic understanding of this. Because he did this many, many times in laboratory experiments. If you're cutting with at the chemical level, you have to cut, let it express. And sometimes you get a positive result, and sometimes you get monstrous results. I feel that what happened with man in the past, regardless of who you think did this manipulation, whether it was us, whether it was another species of beings, there was sloppy work done. And these genetic conditions that we see expressed in the human genome have expressed in ways that have created conditions such as primary psychopathy. Because, you know, when you look at primary psychopathy, to me it's almost a smoking gun, definitive proof that, you know, we are something other than simply a creation by God, capital G, by a creator in, you know, on a higher level of existence. Because
it's a reptilian brain cell.
Yeah, you look at the balance that exists in other places in nature, and we're completely antithetical to that balance. We're the exact opposite. So when a lot of scientists are looking for what is the actual reason that primary psychopathy exists, and even lay people just considering the notion, why is this condition of people are born without the ability to feel any consequences of what they do to another human being? Why would that exist anywhere in the world? Why would that exist on any planet? You know, and there's really two answers. There's two considerations. Either God, with a capital G, did this to humanity for some, you know, tormenting reason and wanted to put these interspecies predators here with us, or something else did that. And I don't lean toward the hypothesis that God, the God of creation, did that to humanity to torment us. That is not my belief. You know, again, I can only speculate. Can I tell you I have definitive knowledge of this? No. So, yes, we're stepping out into the realm of speculation. But it would certainly be my contention that this was not done by God to torment mankind forever. I think that something else did this to humanity, and it expressed as, you know, primary psychopathy. That may not have even been their intent. It was just a consequence of their behavior, of their action, of kind of playing God and possibly genetically modifying or engineering another species. So that's my take on why we see these types of anomalies in the human genetic material.
Well, we have another friend showed up on the call here. I want to bring him in just because I want to bring him in. One of our compatriots that puts in, like myself and Tony. I'm doing at least 10 shows a week right now. But we have Santo Bonacci on the line, so I want to bring Santo in for a sec.
You guys put me to shame. I'll tell you that. I can't even imagine it. God bless you. Seriously, God bless you, because I would be dead if I attempted something like that.
It's fun. Yeah, this is my third show today. I've got 6 hours under my belt at the end of this one. But Santo, go ahead. What do you got, my friend?
Hey, look, I'm so glad to be on this call. I was on another one and just got off it. But please continue. I just want to listen and learn. This is great. I got here.
I'm a big fan of your work. Great work that you do. Thanks so much for doing what you do.
Yeah, likewise, Mark. Likewise, and it's just exquisite information. I just turned on in 10 minutes ago where you started talking about primary psychopathy and secondary, and that's brilliant. That really joins a few dots for me, because the primary psychopaths are the ones that are teaching the herd how to be secondary psychopaths. Would you say?
That's right. That's exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah, so we've got all these well-intentioned mothers, for instance, right, and they take their children to get their shots, and they're so proud at the end of the day, oh, my children have got all their shots. So you've got mothers that, instead of caring for the children, are killing their own children by vaccinating them. That's just one example, but they've created a whole society where we're telling on each other with the Patriot laws that go back to the Inquisition. You know, if you see a renegade, make sure you tell the authorities. We don't need renegades in the community, right. People who free think, etc. So we've got these secondary psychopaths doing good deeds. Of course, the highway to hell is paved with good intentions, and that's the world we live in.
Exactly, and
wow.
It's so important to understand this condition. So many people, I read a comment. I can't recall exactly. It was some anonymous quote or a quote on a Facebook page or something like that, and it said, "There are more adults who would rather continue to believe in Santa Claus than there are adults who would prefer to truly understand what psychopathy is and how psychopaths are really in control of our society." And I just found that so, empowering, because it's so true. People don't want to look at this level of darkness that's in humanity, because it opens up a big can of worms, not only about what you do to deal with the fact that this happens to be the current human condition, but what put it there. And that's what we were speculating upon. And again, I'm not offering definitive. I just want to, express that as a caveat. I don't have the definitive knowledge of why human psychopathy, primary psychopathy, exists. We know a lot about why secondary psychopathy exists for certain, and that is condition created. That is largely determined by factors of circumstances that an individual has been in their life. Primary psychopathy is an entirely different animal that has to do with the brain literally being formed, coding a certain way through the genetic expressions, and actually having a capability that exists within a normal functioning human being that has a normal range of human emotions, basically amputated from the capability of the brain. So you could look at it like, a primary psychopath is a person that was born without arms, literally. Something happened to allow this genetic anomaly to express, and they were born without the ability to empathize with anyone else. They don't have the normal response range of human emotions, and they take behaviors that ultimately they feel they don't want to have any responsibility for, and it doesn't matter who gets hurt in the process. So these are the monsters that are ultimately in control of the institutions everywhere on the earth. But secondary psychopathy is not like that. Secondary psychopathy would be like someone at some point through a diminishment of their will decided to stop using their arms, okay? And they let their muscles of their arms completely atrophy. They still had them, and if they worked them and worked with them over, and engaged their will to work with them, they could build those muscles back up eventually and gain normal use. But primary psychopathy, again, is a different animal. That's like being born without arms. Regardless of how much someone would want to take something from me, if I offered it to them, a physical object, and said, here, could you please take this from me? Even if they wanted to with their mind, they would not have the capacity to do it because they simply lack the physiological mechanism to take that behavior. That's what we're talking about with primary psychopathy, where there's no capability. It does not exist because that part of the brain that regulates human emotions is not functioning at all. It is basically an amputated capability within the brain, and that is a genetic condition. Many people don't want that to be true. They'll ignore it by saying that, that can't be the case. This, it has to be wrong, or the science is bad. They don't want to acknowledge that, a small percentage of humanity is born like that, and that, is their condition from birth. Unfortunately, as Santos said correctly, they are teaching other people to be secondary psychopaths. They want other people to be like them, not at the top of the pecking order like they are, like they've manipulated their way into those positions, because they want people to be just enough like them that they can control those people through limiting their sense of perceptions and then getting them to engage in all of these immoral behaviors that are ultimately bringing the repercussions of natural law down upon them and keeping them in greater levels of control. That makes them all the more easily manipulated and controlled by the true psychopaths who are really running these institutionalized bodies that we are so attached to and think are somehow doing good for humanity on a whole. We need to understand how these two conditions operate in the world and understand that secondary psychopathy can be healed. We can heal that. It is possible for people to come out of that condition by making different choices and really putting themselves around different conditions, especially different informational conditions. Physical conditions can be very difficult to break, sometimes to get physically out of a physical condition. There's a lot of, factors that govern that, particularly financial factors. But everybody has some level of control over what they will allow to bypass their brain by going into their eyes and ears, to go into their brain by bypassing their eyes and ears. We can choose to listen to different information. We can choose to direct our attention differently and learn alternative information from what we've been conditioned to believe is just the way things are. Once that process starts, we can ultimately build those muscles again and start to undo the atrophying of the soul that has been done over so much time and undo this condition of secondary psychopathy in the world. Once that's done, the number of primary psychopaths is so tiny. I feel it is well under 1%. I don't even think it's 1% of humanity that is primarily psychopathic. Many people will argue that number. I've heard people suggest up to 4%, which I think is a horrifically overinflated number. I think the amount of primary psychopaths in humanity is well under 1%. If we could heal the secondary psychopaths, the influence of the primary psychopaths would be so negligible, it would be incalculable. How much we would reduce the mass effect that they can possibly have over the totality of humanity. Their numbers are so small. The only way they can continue to do that, again, is to keep more people in their mindset. They've given us their mindset. Once we get out of their mindset, we could mitigate and basically make negligible their influence on the whole of society worldwide.
Yeah, completely. There is. I need to put forward, though. I mean, obviously, we know these people have been inbred for the job. These are the bloodlines. These are the people that have had certain things, like we breed dogs, we breed other animals. These people that are in these positions have been bred for their attributes that is required by the ruling class. Okay?
That's right.
But what we need to look at, and also where we need to go with this, and this is very important. Sorry about that, I had to cough. This is very important because what we're uncovering, the depth of the research that we have actually gone to, is we have things like free energy, we have anti-gravity, we actually have stuff that is science fiction and way beyond science fiction. But what has actually occurred is the psychopathic elements of this, shall we say, breakaway civilization, which is what we're really looking at here. The people down here to do the dirty work and the people out there to run the entire planet, as you said, the prison planet. What we need to do is address the fact that we need to get that consciousness going again so that enough people understand we have this technology, it's been sequestered from us that are trapped on the planet, and that we need access to this, and we need to understand the mentality of the people that have constructed this entire construct and trapped us down here on Earth. Now, I do appreciate we've only got 10 minutes to go, so I'm really trying to squeeze it down into a zip file, but I just needed to get that across because it's a vital component.
That's absolutely right, and this is a breakaway civilization that we are dealing with and that we are up against if we're going to ultimately free humanity from the chains that have bound it for so long. It isn't to say that we're powerless against them. If we say no to what they want us to continue to do and stop engaging in those behaviors, they have no power. The only power they have is the power that we choose to give them by following their sick, twisted, psychopathic orders.
Yeah, I just want to jump in here for a sec. We got 9 minutes left here. Just to let you know, Mark, that we can go past the hour. It won't be on the air, but it will be in the recording for the download. And I've already had people saying that 2 hours is not enough. 2 days wouldn't be enough. So I'm putting forth my hand of invitation because I got to tell you, if we don't deal up the stuff we're dealing up right now and outside the box, people are disappointed. So this is one of the reasons why the listeners that are tuned in right now, we have many, are at the level that need to hear this. That
sure.
It's to confirm their own intuitions. You know, I mean, that's what we are. We're intuitive and we're vibrating together. But I just wanted to just get the word out here, and then we can end it off whenever. I want to thank people for tuning into Freedom Reigns Blog Talk Radio. This is Outside the Box. And I want to get your website out there, What on Earth is Happening, yes?
Yes, whatonearthishappening.com.
You got it. Okay, so I just want to make sure that that's out there. It's going to be on the recording anyway, but I like to make sure that people get by to listen to your archives. As you've heard, there's, I think Martin is the only one I know that, and I do a lot of research, is the only one I know that's actually listened to all of your shows and was able to name it by number. That's why I wanted him here.
Yes.
He brought you into my reality a while back, and I've done my own research, and yeah, we're on parallel paths of this beautiful awakening. And by the way, I do have a copy of the Satanic Bible. I like to look everywhere, so I just want to share that with you as well. No fear, people. You got to look everywhere. So on that note, no stress for the clock. I've already said my piece. Thanks, freedomreigns.us and Blog Talk for getting us out there. And the show will be downloadable, and we'll keep it going for as long as you feel like you want to, and it's all good. Okay?
Yes. Well, I appreciate that offer. I think tonight I will not be able to take you up on that because I have a meeting scheduled with a friend whose family member recently passed away, and I wanted to meet with him and pay some respects and chat with him and see how he's doing. So I have that scheduled for after I'm off the air tonight.
All good.
So
all good.
Perhaps we could just maybe do another show in the near future and continue the line of discussion then.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Mark, I'd love to have you on American Freedom Radio. So we'll keep in touch, and we'll do this again.
Absolutely, I'd love to come on the show.
Yeah. You'll probably be contacted by either Jason or Scott, who are actually lining up guests. But they did say that they've got you in mind. If they haven't approached you yet, it will be very, very soon.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, right. I'm going to take the helm while I've got the opportunity here, Mark, because I've got a whole list of stuff that I wanted to go through. We're not going to have the time to do it, unfortunately. The sooner we can get you back on all of these shows, that'll be wonderful. But as I was saying just briefly, we do have a breakaway civilization situation. It is in an emergency situation at the moment. It's pretty much, we've really got to get our butts off the seat and do something about this now, which is why we're going hell for leather and doing as many shows as we possibly can to get this information out. We're on TCT, These Changing Times, and we're on Truth Central Radio, Freedom Reigns, and Awake Aware Radio, plus, any others that crop up in the meantime. But what I've actually found is, and I need to put this across to see whether or not you resonate with this, what we've got is the crown is basically the Vatican controlling the crown. The crown is basically completely controlled, but who's controlling the Vatican? This is where I move into the Zionist aspects of who's controlling the American government and many others. Fundamentally, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Masons, the secret. Let's just call them secret societies for now, because we're running out of time rapidly.
Right.
The information that I've actually learned is that we've got a Jesuit situation, and it goes even way, way further back than that. So while we've got the opportunity, I'd love to get your opinion on that, but it does lead back to a breakaway civilization and technology that's way in excess of what we can currently imagine, including time travel, faster than light speed, technology, and it goes right the way back. So over to you, Mark.
Yes.
Please.
All of those orders, sects, and groups certainly have a hand in the control system, in the overarching agenda, this network, this hierarchical, centralized network of interconnected orders and societies. The pitfall that a lot of people fall into is thinking that only one of this strands of the spider web are controlling the entire web. They are working together. These psychopathic entities are all working together because ultimately they are different aspects of the ancient orders of the mystery traditions that over time fell into deep ego and control. So they took these really ancient systems that were attempting to preserve truth and to preserve the understanding of how reality actually operates and to preserve the understanding of natural law, and recognized that if they could take that knowledge and secret it, control it, hoard it, hide it away from other people's sight, that they would gain a tactical advantage over them. At a psychological level, they recognize that this is really, all this knowledge is self-knowledge. It is knowledge about how the human psyche operates to direct the direct our own actions, and ultimately create our own reality. If you can hide that knowledge away from people, if you have the egoic will to basically operate with that knowledge and simultaneously hold it back from other people, you're creating, through an extreme differential in knowledge, what you're creating is an extreme differential in power. And that's how they operate. And that's all. See, I never get into the whole what group is above this group or controlling that group. You have to look at it like it's one hand washing the other, one hand patting the other on the back and exchanging favors, and ultimately at some point working together while at the same time planning a possible stabbing in the back of the other group whenever the opportunity presents itself. A psychopath is only ultimately concerned about what he gets for himself. and he wants to come out at the top of the food chain. So I would look at these are all interconnected networks working together toward the same general centralized control, and they're all different aspects of the fall of the true mystery schools of the ancient world that did have a preserved understanding of natural law and the definitive knowledge of conscience and right and wrong, but they over time fell into ego, and this degenerated to become the different religions, religious sects, orders, secret societies, and fundamentalist groups of the world and world institutions. And that is ultimately, as a whole, that network is what we're up against, because it has ultimately, through this knowledge, gained control over the minds of the masses of the people who absolutely were sequestered from that knowledge that they possessed and hoarded over thousands of years. So that's the way I see this entire hierarchical network and how it operates. I don't try to point to one specific group, but get people to understand the overarching dynamic that is at work here.
Yeah, exactly. 38 levels above top secret, etc. This stuff goes way out there. There's people like John Leonard Walson that's photographed craft up there, some of the craft that are responsible for the dustification of the towers, etc. But these things are absolutely huge. They are cities and cities, and they're traveling at millions and millions of miles an hour. And they are there if you want to go and look. John Leonard Walson. And that's just one example of loads I could throw across the board, but we don't have time, so...
No. And just to let you guys know, we just went off the air, and to be mindful of Mark's situation, I want to let him get going as quickly as possible. But I did want to put forth my hand of gratitude and appreciation for what you're doing. We can't thank you enough. This is team effort. We've got it together. We have this game finally to a level that we'll talk more, and you'll know what I'm talking about. But thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate, Tony. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have been here. Let's do it again soon.
Yes, and thank you, Martin, for introducing me a while back to Mark's stuff. So thanks again. You've been listening to freedomreigns.us. Get to Mark's site, www.whatonearthishappening.com. Much love to all, and to all, a good night. Take care.
Thank you, Mark. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Okay, we're off the air.